Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. How are we doing?
Waiting for Friday.
You're waiting for Friday? It's coming. In a mere less than 24 hours, 12 hours, 14 hours even. Friday will be here. No, they're just not they're not in class for some reason. I still have 14 people. 14 people on my list, although a few of them are online, but we're still missing a handful of people.
3 people from the class or 2?
We are missing, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're missing 7 bodies from this class.
I mean, like in class here.
What? What's that?
We should be here like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 people here.
No, there should be 11 people in this room right now. 12 if you include me. Yeah. Why? Why is the question of the day. I don't know. I don't know why people aren't here. But anyway, let's move on. So Amanpreet is here online. Good morning, Amanpreet. Hadil is here. Good morning, Hadil. Michelle is here. Hello, Michelle. Adon is here. Hello, good morning to you. And Irene is here. Good morning. Yesterday, we were talking a little bit about subsistence practices, right? We said that this was how people get their food, the manner in which people get their food, and it's the kind of basis for all other cultural developments, or at least that's what we were arguing. We started off talking about foraging, and we said that foraging or hunting and gathering was how humans, Homo sapiens, got their food for really most of their history. So if you agree with the idea that we've been around for 300,000 years, as we'll talk about today, we've only been farming for about 12,000 of those years. So 94 or more % of our existence on this planet has been hunting and gathering, right? We said that hunter-gatherers generally move around and collect food from the natural world. They don't grow any food or keep any animals, besides dogs, really. Most people lived in small groups. They knew each other very well, and they cooperated, and may have bumped into other hunter-gatherer groups from time to time. But most people, if you lived in a hunter-gatherer group thousands of years ago, you probably wouldn't really encounter many more people than the 30 or 40 or 50 people that were in your group. You would actually just never meet anyone else, which is kind of a little strange to think about, right? We said that in some places, hunter-gatherers were able to get together in bigger groups, and sorry, I'm just going to jump ahead because we've seen these before, and we call those complex foragers or complex hunter-gatherers. And again, they're complex because their subsistence strategy is more complicated. Simple foragers just kind of move around, find what they find, eat whatever is there, and it's kind of a simple way of getting your food. But complex foragers are a little more organized. They're sort of targeting different foods at different times of the year, and they're preserving them, right? They're drying them out, they're storing them, and eating them in the winter in this case. And so because they have more food available to them, they can live in bigger groups. And because they live in bigger groups, they tend to develop sort of a bit of a social hierarchy or a social structure. So some people do have prestige and power. There are chiefs, and sometimes those chiefs are hereditary. And sometimes there's even slaves. There's people who are owned by other people in these societies too. So again, there's different types of foragers around. Again, here on the Northwest Coast, a lot of the foragers we find here are complex foragers or complex hunter-gatherers because it was such a rich area in terms of food resources for them. Right, and we said today that very few people are actually foragers today. They've kind of been pushed to the margins, pushed to the edges of the landscape by people who farm, right? So farming has really taken over as the subsistence strategy for pretty much the entire planet, right? So there's a few of us who are still pastoralists, a few people who keep herds of animals, but for the most part, humans are farmers, right? And so these hunter-gatherers have kind of been pushed to the edges, and some of them continue to operate either as part-time hunter-gatherers or as full-time hunter-gatherers. Then we kind of switched gears for a short period yesterday talking about critical thinking. And I said that this is an important skill to learn because, you know, like it or not, we live in a very complicated world, right? There's a lot of information, there's a lot of viewpoints, there's a lot of, you know, events and things to keep on top of. And so we kind of need some skills to be able to filter out the information and figure out what to believe. I forget what the statistic is, but in terms of the amount of information that you and I are kind of bombarded with every day through, you know, advertisements, through our phone, through television, if you watch television, the amount of images and information that you receive in a day, hunter-gatherers like we're talking about probably wouldn't have received that much information in their entire lives. So we are absorbing massive amounts of information all the time, every day. And it's, good morning, and it's a lot, right? It's a lot of stuff to deal with. And so, again, critical thinking is useful because we need to be able to sift through all this stuff and figure out what's useful and what is true and what we should kind of believe and hold on to, and what stuff we need to throw out because it's garbage, right? We need to be able to figure that out. And so critical thinking asks us to pay attention to how we think and make sure that if we're going to believe something or agree with something, that we should have good reasons to agree with it and believe it. The other thing that maybe I'll just mention really quickly is that, you know, because the world is so complicated, because there's so much going on, I think one thing that people should probably say more often that they don't, and I'm saying this because I'm guilty of it, you know, it's perfectly okay to say, you know what, I don't know what my opinion on that is on that, or I don't know how I feel about it, because I just don't know enough about it, right? And because sometimes I feel like we're pressured to have an opinion on something, right? What's your position on this? What's your position on that? And it's very okay to say, you know what, I don't think I know enough about it to really say for sure. And again, it's impossible to know everything about everything, but often we're, you know, we feel pressure to feel a certain way about something, and I think it's okay to say, you know, I just don't know right now. I don't know enough about this particular situation. So we said that critical thinking and arguments work on claims, right? Things people say to be true. And we said that these claims can be organized into arguments, right? I'm skipping through these quickly because you've seen all these slides before. And an argument, we said, is a group of statements that kind of cooperate together to convince people that something is true or is not true, right? And so the conclusion is the thing that the main thing you're trying to convince someone of, and then the premises are the things that are also need to be true, and they support that conclusion, right? So there we go. So I gave you a very simple argument yesterday about coffee and the fact that you should drink it because it's delicious and inexpensive and helps you study. And then I asked you to evaluate that argument, right? Based on kind of two criteria. One, do my premises logically support my conclusion? And are my premises true? Or at least, you know, could I demonstrate them as true, right? And I think we agreed that all three of these premises are reasons why someone might drink coffee, right? They might drink it because it's delicious. They might drink it because it's not too expensive, it's affordable. And they might drink it because they want to, you know, be mentally sharp and get a good grade on their exam. Those are all reasonable, you know, justifications for drinking coffee. Are they all true? Well, maybe they're true. The first two are probably not 100% true. There's always people who will not like the taste of coffee. There's always people for whom coffee will be expensive, but I think we can intuitively say they're mostly true, or maybe they're true for a lot of people. The third one, I think we kind of have an idea that this is true. We might have to go to the science and read up on it just to be sure, but I think based on what I know, that kind of feels true to me. I'm not 100% sure, but it's certainly something that people believe to be true. Whether it is, I think we'd have to dig into the science. So we agreed that I had a pretty valid argument here, right? I'd assembled an argument with logical premises and premises that were true, or at least provable as true. But we also said that you might disagree with this argument, or you might say this is a perfectly good argument, but I'm not going along with it anyway. There might be overriding concerns, religious or cultural ideas, personal ideas. Maybe you just don't want to ingest any drugs in your system, and caffeine is a drug. Maybe you have health concerns that my argument has not addressed, right? And so, if this was a debate, then you might bring that up, and you might say, well, what about the benefits or negative effects of coffee on your health, Mike? You haven't talked about that at all. Can you fill us in? You're asking us to drink coffee, but are there negative health effects? Tell us, right? That's a way that you could challenge part of my argument.
Okay, we said like coffee is a drug. Like according to us or our understanding, whenever we say drug, it's either something that we take for health issue or something that lets our mind just go over it.
Yeah.
So, but caffeine works the opposite. Like according to many people, it wakes them up, right?
Yeah.
So it's a drug.
I think what they would say, and oh boy, I hope I'm not gonna say it wrong here, but I think drugs are things that have a pharmacological effect on you. So they're not necessarily food. They are substances that alter the regular normal operation of your brain, right? And so caffeine falls into that category. And even though, again, it's very socially acceptable, we don't think of it as a drug, right? We think of it as, a caramel macchiato. That's what we think of it as. We don't think of it as a drug. But again, it is, right? Alcohol is very similar, right? It has a pharmacological effect on your brain. And so, when we go for a beer, we don't often think about the fact that we're consuming, actually it's not a drug, it's a poison is what it is, a mild poison. Yeah, but we don't think about that. We kind of phrase it differently. But then there are other substances for which we clearly identify as drugs, right? Things that your doctor will prescribe to you, or illegal substances that people take for various reasons. So, it's interesting how we, both caffeine and cocaine are both stimulants, right? But it's funny how we have placed them in different categories, right? This is, just what I need to get going in the morning, and I love my cup of coffee, and, I like to go to Starbucks and get a fancy one. We contrast that versus cocaine, which is bad, right? And of course, they're different drugs, and there's one is far more potent than the other. So there are differences there, but at a basic level, they are very similar in that they do some similar things to your brain, but one is far more extreme than the other, right? And has a lot of other negative effects associated with it as well. But again, you could challenge me on this argument. It's not perfect. It's not bulletproof, and that's fine. Where are we here? Right, so we did that. Got a couple of duplicate slides. Yeah, and so I wanted to ask you to maybe come up with your own argument, okay? So I'll just give you a minute or two, and you can come up with an argument that is, come up with a good argument. So a conclusion, so something you want people to believe or something that you believe, and then maybe a couple of premises, right? Good supporting reasons why we should believe that thing. And your argument can be about anything. It can be about food or movies or video games or politics or whatever you like, right? Anything you like, music, movies, anything. So I'm gonna give you 2 minutes, try and come up with a really quick argument, and then we'll talk about them, okay? Excuse me. Okay, let's hear some arguments. Good arguments, bad arguments, or otherwise. Baha, what do you got for me?
I got for you. BMW is more for younger and richer people than Mercedes.
Okay, so the conclusion here is that BMWs are a car that is more for younger people and for younger, richer people, or younger and richer people?
Both.
Okay, so BMWs are cars for young people and for rich people. Why should we believe that, Baha?
Or let me clarify. At least that shows you are rich.
Okay, so,
You said it like that.
okay, well, hang on, let's turn that into a premise then. So BMWs are cars for the young and the rich, right? Why should we believe that? Well,
First of all, it is the shape of it and the aerodynamic that it has is better than Mercedes. Mercedes is like for old people, retired people. Oh, I have a Mercedes, you know, when I go.
okay, so let me stop you there for a second. So, okay, so first premise is that BMWs are kind of aerodynamically styled, right? They're very sexy looking, and younger people tend to like their cars to look very sexy, whereas older people are more practical and boring, right? So the BMW is more attractive to younger buyers because it's very stylish and sporty. Okay, 2.
Second of all, when you do modifications on it, it will look more aggressive than Mercedes. Mercedes will look aggressive, but kind of, you will see it as not normal.
Okay. So kind of additional accessories that you can add to your BMW to make it look kind of cool and to make it look your own in a way. Those tend to look really good on BMWs, and young people tend to like to customize their cars a little bit. Whereas if you try that with a Mercedes, it's not going to look right. It's going to look tacked on.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. And
Third of all, it's bad in a way and good in a way. have like very common oil leaks, and if you afford to fix them, that means you are rich. Oh, I fixed my BMW
Okay.
head gasket like oil leak.
Okay, so you could say that BMWs are prone to leakage, oil leakage, and so, you know, if you have one, hopefully you have the money to fix it, right? You could also say, as maybe the first premise, is that BMWs are not an inexpensive car, right? As compared to Kia or Hyundai or something, right?
They are expensive.
What's that?
They are expensive.
They are expensive, yes. So you need cash, right? So remember, the original conclusion was BMWs are cars that are for the young and the rich, right? And first of all, BMWs are expensive, so you need some cash in order to buy one. That's a premise, right? That supports your conclusion. They're sporty, sexy cars. Is that a reason why they might be attractive to younger drivers? Of course, right? Is it true? I think it's true. There's maybe a little bit of personal opinion there, but I think that's true. Do younger drivers like to customize their cars and add things onto them? Yes, they often do. Do BMWs look better with those accessories than Mercedes? It's a bit of an opinion thing, but perhaps you could demonstrate it to be true. And the oil leak thing. If BMWs are prone to oil leaks, you might need money to constantly fix them, right? Whereas, yeah, poorer drivers might not be able to do that. So do we have a decent argument here? Yeah, we have 4 premises that logically support the conclusion. All of those premises are true, or, you know, maybe we could demonstrate that they're true. Yeah, I'll take that. Nicholas, you got one for me?
Can I use my previous answer?
Sure. I don't remember what it was.
Apple is better than Android.
Oh, yes, that's right. So Apple phones with Apple phones with Apple software, those are better than Android phones. And why should we believe that, Nicholas?
They're more trendy.
Okay, so the Apple phones are more trendy, more stylish.
Every time Apple releases a new phone, it gets more attention than most Android phones.
Okay, so people seem to care about the release of new Apple phones, where Android, nobody seems to care. Okay, another premise?
Security is better.
Right, so the security on an Apple phone is better than on an Android phone. What else?
The design looks much more beautiful.
Okay, so the user interface, the design is much more pleasing and easy to use than Android. Okay. Friends off? Friends off? Okay, so here we have an argument that Nicholas has presented us with. The conclusion is that Apple is superior to Android. Why should we believe that? Well, Apples are trendier. There seems to be more attention given to Apple than to Android. Is that a reason why someone might buy an Apple phone rather than an Android phone? Yeah, not everybody, but that's a reason why someone might do it. Is that true? Seems to be true. I don't know. Maybe I'm in a bubble, but I seem to know when Apple releases new things, and Android, like I couldn't tell you. Like I don't notice any news stories.
They have more buying rates than iPhone.
They have more buying rights?
Rates.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that could be part of a counter argument, right? That you could argue that Android is actually superior to Apple. But from my perspective, it's true. I don't know if it's absolutely true, but it seems like there's more fuss made about Apple releases than Android from where I sit. I don't know if it's true. What's that? That could be it as well, right? Apple is a better marketer, which they are good at marketing. Second one was security, right? Yeah, so Apple phones are more secure than Android phones. Now, I think that might be true. I don't know if it is. I'd need to see the research to be absolutely sure, but I'm sure that you could dig it up for me if you needed to, right? You could find that information. So is that a reason why someone might buy an Apple phone? Security? Yeah. Is it true? Maybe. You'd have to give us some evidence. Still okay though. And the last one is user interface, right? So user interface with Apple is much better than with Android. Is that a reason why someone might buy an Apple product? It is, right? Nice user interface. People like to deal with that. Is it true? Maybe. That one's a bit of a matter of opinion, right? So you might have to do some work to try and indicate that one is that one is true. But maybe we can notice a little bit of a pattern here, both in this argument, in the phone argument, and in my original coffee argument, that the premises that rely on personal opinion aren't that strong, are they? Right? And particularly, like, it's just like the coffee is delicious or the user interface of Apple is more enjoyable. Like, how do you prove that, right? Somebody can just take a drink and go, ugh, gross, I don't like it. And suddenly your premise falls apart. So the better premises are the ones that can be proven objectively true, right? The ones that everybody can see that this is a true statement, right? Whereas, coffee tastes delicious it's always subject to personal taste, right? There's no way we can prove objectively that coffee is delicious, right? So keep that in mind, right? Because the premises that are based on some kind of opinion or preference or taste, they're always going to be a little weaker because you can never absolutely prove that they are true, right? They're only true as far as someone agrees with you. But still, good argument. Mulder, what do you got for me?
Abortion should be legalized.
Abortion should be legalized. Oh, now we're getting into the complicated topics.
Because it should be a right that, what a woman decides to do with her body should be a right.
Okay, so abortions have to do with a woman's body, and so she should have control over that. Okay.
Being a human is miserable.
Being human, okay.
Because we stand upright, we're eventually gonna have back pain, back injury of some sort.
Uh-huh.
And it is, and accidents happen, and accidental pregnancy could destroy a family or maybe the life of that. Well, if I say the life of the unborn child, it would make it look like we shouldn't abort.
Okay, well let's take that. Well, let's separate that one out because there's a few things. So number one, the argument is that abortion should be legal. Why should we believe that? What's that?
What was it?
Abortion is ending a pregnancy before the child is born. So abortion should be legal. Why should it be legal? Well, because this is something that directly affects a woman's body, and she should have the right to choose what to do with it. That's one premise. The second premise is that having a child is a big thing, right? And so, if you are at a place in your life where you're not ready for a child, or if you simply don't want a child, if you simply don't want to raise a child, then maybe it's a bad idea for you to have one, right? The other part of that might be that sometimes people get pregnant in ways that they don't intend to, right? So maybe they were, maybe they were drunk, or worse, maybe they were sexually assaulted, maybe they were raped, right? And so if they didn't choose to become pregnant, should they have the right to end that pregnancy? And you're arguing that yes, they should. Anything else? Any other premises that will work for this one? Being a human is miserable. That's an opinion question. So I'm going to leave that one out because I think it's going to weaken your argument. But the other three are are reasonable, right? So, you know, the first premise then, so abortion should be made legal or should be legal. Why should we believe that? Premise one is that because it's a woman's body and she should have the right to do with it what she wants. Okay? Is that a reason why someone might have an abortion? Yes. Certainly if a woman didn't have control over her own body, she would not be able to have one. So it kind of works in the reverse. So yes. Okay, hang on. There are other things attached to that premise, right? About because there's an open question of who does your body belong to? Who does your body belong to? Does it belong to you? Does it belong to your family? Does it belong to the state, the government? Who does your body belong to? Yeah, most people would say it belongs to you. And so do you have the right to do with it what you want?
Yes, but you have to take out the consequences.
Right. So if you want to get a tattoo, is that anyone's decision but yours?
No.
Okay. So that's entirely your decision. If you want to cut your hair or dye it or grow it or get a piercing somewhere in your ear or your nose or somewhere else, whose decision is that? Yours, right? So we can sort of demonstrate that most people probably feel that their body belongs to them. And if that is true, then women should be able to have an abortion because it is their body. Now, there's another piece of that argument because there's also a little fetus, right? There's a little new life growing there. So that's another piece of the puzzle. But just to keep things simple and from, we don't want to open this can of worms here, but yeah, is that premise, can we defend that premise as true? We can, right? That first premise that it's a woman's body and people are in charge of their own bodies and can do what they like with their bodies, right? Again, it's a more complicated issue than that, but can we say that it's at least partly true? Yeah, right, at least partly. The second one is that if you're not ready to have a child, then you may not want to have one, and so maybe having an abortion is something you might want to do. So might someone have an abortion if they're not ready to have a child or if they don't want to have a child? Yes, and in fact, people do. So that one is logical support for the conclusion, and it's true. People have done that and will continue to do that, right? So that one's okay. Now again, you don't have to agree with these, we just have to sort out the argument. And the third one is that, a woman might become pregnant, not on purpose, right? It might be an accident, even worse, it might be a rape or a sexual assault. And so might someone want to end or terminate their pregnancy if they were raped and they got pregnant? Yeah, they could want that, right? Is that true? Do some women do that? Yeah, they absolutely do. So here we have an argument that is, the premises logically support the conclusion, and they are true or, true-ish from a certain perspective, right? Again, are there other pieces to this argument? Absolutely, right? We haven't considered the rights of this fetus, of this little new life. We haven't considered what rights that new life might have. We haven't considered when that little thing might have human rights. Is it human from when the sperm swims into the egg, is it human immediately? Or is it only human after a certain number of weeks or months? Or does it matter? There's social issues, there's religious issues, there's personal issues. There's all kinds of things attached to this debate, right? So, obviously we could take this argument and there's a bunch of counter arguments to it. But is this a valid argument? Yeah, for our purposes it definitely is. I'm just going to go and look. Some online people have put a few up here, and I just want to address those things. So Amanpreet says, education should be free for everyone. Okay, that's the conclusion of Amanpreet's argument. And so as good critical thinkers, Baha's already given it the thumbs up, but let's suspend judgment for a minute and ask Amanpreet, well, why should we believe this? Why should education be free for everyone? And so she says here, number one, education is the greatest weapon for people. Oh, what's that about?
Yeah, it's your phone.
It is my phone. Hang on a sec. Yeah, okay, it's my camera's, oh yeah. Weird. It suddenly decided it was going to use the phone or the camera from my iPhone and not the camera from my laptop. Has that been like that for a while, or did it just do it?
Yeah, I thought like you left it.
It had been like that
Yeah,
for a
it's
while.
like
So,
since
yeah.
you gave us time to think about it.
Really? Weird. Wow. Yesterday I found I could use the speakers through here, and now there's this. Although I knew I could do that, but it's weird that it switched on its own. Okay, sorry, Amanpreet. So education should be free for everyone. Why should we believe that? Well, it's the greatest weapon in order for people to improve the country. Okay, so is society improved when people are educated? Right. So Amanpreet's first premise here is that education should be free because it will benefit the entire country. Is that a reason why we might make education free? Sure, right? Is it true?
Yes.
I think we all kind of intuitively feel that it's true. Okay, good. Yeah, and it will lead the country in the right direction. Okay, that's good. Amanpreet's got another one here, I think. Oh no, same one. Okay, so basically, okay, maybe two premises. So maybe the second one here is that education should be free because when people are educated, society will benefit, and free education will help people lead society in the right direction. Those two premises are kind of very similar, but that's okay, right? So do we have a good argument here that has logical support and that is true? Yeah, perfect. Let me see. Adel, do you have one for me?
We should eat local.
Oh, we should eat local. Okay, so Adel's argument here is we should eat local. We should eat foods that come from the surrounding area, not that come from Ecuador or somewhere far, far away. Why should we believe that, Adel?
It's good for the diet.
Okay, so local foods might be good for our diet, good for nutrition and health. Okay.
Supports local farms.
Right. It gives support to local farmers, people in our community, people in our province. Okay. And do you have a third one, maybe, or not?
Yeah, good for health.
And it's good for our health. Okay. Could we also say that maybe it is maybe it's more environmentally friendly as well? Could we say that? I mean, if I'm eating a banana and it comes from Ecuador, somehow that banana had to get all the way here, right? And so it probably, it got picked in Ecuador, and then it got on a truck, and then it got on a boat, and then it got off the boat and got on another truck, and maybe the trucks were, refrigerated to keep the bananas from ripening too fast. And so all that stuff takes power, right? All that stuff takes energy. And that energy likely creates pollution. So if I can eat foods that come from just the local area, maybe I can cut down on pollution, right? Maybe it's more environmentally sustainable if I eat things that are grown close by rather than things that are grown, on a different continent, basically. Maybe. Yeah. So Adel's argument here, we should eat locally grown foods. Okay, why should we believe that? Well, it's good for our diet and nutrition. Is that a reason why someone might eat local or might eat anything? Good for your health? Good for, yeah.
Because is it like, does he mean because the area we live in, it matches like the soil we should eat from? Because let's say the food that comes out from Ecuador, the soil and the temperature, the nature there is very different than here.
Sure.
With the proteins, something related molecules or something.
Oh, I don't know. Are you thinking about that, Adel? Like the soil and the molecules and
Because it does give a
certainly, yeah. Certain types of soil are required to grow certain types of plants, right? So, yeah, like you can grow a banana tree here. We have some palm trees, but not the same species. But some people have palms here, but they don't, they won't grow quite the same as in a warm climate. Well, that actually might be a counter argument piece, right? Is that, Adel's saying we should eat local, but a counter argument might be, well, yeah, but I like foods that aren't grown here, right? You can't grow good bananas in Canada. And so, that would be the counter argument is that, yeah, okay, eat local is fine, but what if nothing grows by you? And I could think of Edmonton, for instance, where we can grow wheat and barley and millet, and we can grow little apples on crab apple trees. That's about it. That's what we can grow. So eat local is nice when lots of stuff grows around you, but when you live in the cold north, nothing grows, right? But that's okay. We're not going to deal with the counter argument. We're just going to deal with the main argument. So eat local. It's good for your health and for your nutrition. It helps support your local community, which is good. And maybe it cuts down on pollution and global warming as well, right? Are all of those reasons why someone might eat local? Yeah. Are they true? Probably, right? Probably at least mostly true, or we could do some scientific digging in order to determine how good local food is for us and what kind of carbon footprint this banana actually has, right? So yeah, that's a good argument. Ivan, got an argument for me?
renting or owning a house.
For owning a house?
Renting or
Oh, okay. So what would you like to argue, that people should rent houses or people should attempt to own them?
for in some countries, we have most of the homes is not affordable. Like we have to spend a lot of money for just buying a house, and sometimes it's not possible to buy a house
Right.
if you're not really rich.
Right. Well, and unfortunately, you've arrived at a place in the world where that is also true. Yeah, so, okay, so that's a true statement, right? Sometimes, there are places in the world where home ownership is too expensive and you're just forced to rent unless you're a super rich person. But how can we turn that into an argument with something to prove?
Could be more cost efficient.
What's that?
Could be more cost efficient.
Yeah, maybe. Well, here's a couple of suggestions for a conclusion. One might be that people have the right to own their own home. Okay, that might be one conclusion. Or you could say that, the government should take steps to make home ownership more affordable. Maybe.
Sorry for interrupting.
Sure.
You think we should buy or we should not?
Well, I think Ivan, you were kind of just stating the situation, right? Yeah, like how, this is kind of the place we are, right? Yeah, and which is fine, but that's, as I say, there's no, in that situation, there's no argument there, right? Because it's not really trying to prove something. And so arguments are trying to say, are trying to convince you that maybe everyone should have the right to own a home, or an argument might be trying to convince you that the government should step in and put in place regulations to make home ownership more affordable. Or you could make the argument that, in fact, even though most people are obsessed with owning a home, renting can actually be quite beneficial in a number of ways. Blah, 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 right? So you could go a few different paths when you kind of recognize the fact that a lot of people rent, and a lot of people who are renting would like to own something, but they just can't afford it because you need to have a lot of money to own something, right? So you've stated kind of a truth about the situation, right? About how things are, which is good. And then an argument goes the next step and says, but here's what I think. I think this should happen, or I think you should do this, or I think you should think this, right? And so, again, you could go a bunch of different paths, but again, you could say people have the right to own a home or to own the property they live in, or that government should do a much better job regulating the home ownership market so that regular people can afford something. Or you could try to convince people that actually renting is not a bad option. It's actually has a number of benefits that people often forget about, right? Any of those things could be, arguments that you could build out of realizing that a situation is the way it is, right? Does that make sense? Yeah? That was a good one, actually, because it's a good example of how you can take a situation that you kind of know to be true, and then you can take one more step and have a position on it, right? And I don't know what your position is, but that's, yeah. You want to take a little break? A little breaky? Okay. Take a little break. We'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about this, and then we'll talk about farming. All right. And we are back. So we know what arguments are. We built a few of our own. That is good. I think we have a good kind of intuitive grasp for what an argument is and how premises work. And yeah, it was useful, I think, to go through that and to pay attention to the fact that, again, premises that are based on personal opinion, you know, they're not as strong, right? They're not as good support for your conclusion. Things that you can demonstrate as absolutely true are much stronger, right? And again, you can, you know, if you have a situation that you know to be true, like we were talking about housing and renting costs, well, here in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland, but also other cities around the world too, you can take that something that you know and you can use it to kind of take a stand, right? To take a position, whatever that might be, and you can build an argument out of it. Let's see. So I think, I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit. Right to here. Okay. So, back to our friends the foragers. We said that hunter-gatherers and foragers were only found in kind of just marginal areas, right? They've been pushed to the edges of the landscape by people who have been farming, right? And why are they there? Well, again, because some people, about 12,000 years ago, started to change to a new subsistence strategy. They started to grow their own food. This doesn't sound like a big deal, right? Especially in a world where we're used to farming and farmers. We get all our food from farms. It's not that big a deal. But this change here that starts around 12,000 years ago or so is probably one of the biggest changes that's happened to human beings, if not the biggest one in human history. This cultural change here that they call the agricultural revolution, this changes everything about humans. Nothing that is currently, you know, our modern world is impossible without this switch to agriculture. Okay, so it doesn't seem like a big deal. You know, growing crops in your backyard does not seem like a big deal, but in fact, it has huge repercussions for human cultural development and sort of what happens to humans over the next 12,000 years. And so it's hugely important. And again, if you asked most anthropologists what's the most significant change that humans have gone through, this is it. The agricultural revolution is it. If you look around the world, you'll find that people don't all start growing crops at the same time. Okay, so some areas of the world are kind of the first to adopt agriculture, and you can see them here on the map. Probably some of the earliest is in the Middle East, in what used to be called Mesopotamia. And so Mesopotamia is the land between two rivers, which we'll talk about probably next week. The Tigris and the Euphrates are the rivers, and so civilizations start to appear there, and they start to grow their own crops, right? You can see, of course, in Southeast Asia, they start to grow their own crops, rice, starting about 7,000 years ago. And then other places in the world too, right? In the Mediterranean, in sub-Saharan Africa, in parts of North and South America, people begin to experiment with growing their food rather than simply collecting it from nature. And so you can see here it happens at different parts of the world in different times. And how we should kind of view this is that everybody kind of starts to do it in their own time, right? So it's not like the people in Egypt and Mesopotamia develop agriculture, and then they tell the people in Asia, and then they start to do it. The people in Asia tell the people in New Guinea. It's not like that, right? People start to sort of develop this approach in their own time when it makes sense for them, okay? And there's kind of one of the big questions around this agricultural revolution, of course, is why, right? Why did people start to grow their own food? humans had been successful as foragers, as hunter-gatherers, for almost 300,000 years, right? If it's not broken, don't fix it, right? So in some ways, things were not broken, right? Humans had been very successful to that point, hunting and gathering. And so why switch? Why move to this new mode of subsistence when the other one seems to have served us very well for most of our existence? When we look back, when we try to find an answer to this question, unfortunately, the archaeological record is very limited in this regard. And the reason it is because A, there's still no writing, okay? So writing comes after agriculture, not before. So there's no written records of humans deciding to start farming. Those don't exist. Foragers do not have extensive archaeological remains. We know that, right? For the most part, they don't have a lot of stuff. They don't leave a lot of stuff behind. And so as they transition to farming, there's not a lot there to find in the ground for archaeologists, right? The other thing we should remember is that this switch to agriculture probably took generations. It's probably a slow transition. So it's not like these hunter-gatherers woke up one morning and said, okay guys, farming. That's what we're doing from now on. Get your shovels, throw away your bow and arrows, let's do this, right? It's not how it happened, right? It was probably a very slow transition. People probably, sort of eased into growing their own food, and eventually it became, the major source of their nutrition and calories. But that took a long time, right? So it's hard to know exactly when this happened because it was really more of a process rather than a, Friday hunting and gathering, Saturday farming, right? It wasn't like that. It was a very slow transition. So the question, of course, is what happened, right? How did people come to start farming? And maybe the most important question is why? Why do they make this huge cultural change when one would imagine everything was going well, right? Hunting and gathering, we said it was a great way of life, 15 to 18 hours a week. We saw those Hadza guys and girls, they were very well, they had great nutrition and they were jacked and they weren't jacked, but they were lean and muscular and seemed happy. Why switch, right? So to do this, to use our critical thinking skills and our new knowledge of arguments and to answer this question about why switch to agriculture, I wanted to read a little article written by Jared Diamond. Jared is an author and he's written a number of books. Guns, Germs, and Steel is probably his most popular one, The Fates of Human Societies. He's also written one called The Third Chimpanzee, The Evolution and Future of the Human Animal. And there's a third one called, I think it's called Collapse. Why, and it's about why societies fall apart. And so, to be honest, I haven't had a chance to read any of these yet. Guns, Germs, and Steel has been on my phone forever, and I haven't managed to read it, so I feel a little guilty about that. But he's very well read. His books have been very popular. And here we'll read a short article where he discusses this transition from foraging to farming, okay? And so what I would like you to do, well, that's my last slide. What I would like you to do is read that article. And so if you look on Microsoft Teams, I have put it into the files section. So if you go to the Comparative Cultures team and you go to files, you'll see a little folder called Readings and Questions. And in it, you will find this article for you to read. And there should be. Are you sure? Does anyone else see it or not see it? What's that? You can see it? Okay. Maybe restart your Teams, Mulder. Sometimes Teams can be a little glitchy, so maybe just restart it. Okay, so the article is there, and then at the end of the article, I have a few questions that I would like to ask you. And so, first of all, I want you to find the argument. And so, to help you along, there's kind of two arguments in this paper. Okay, so as a bit of a hint, Jared Diamond's going to start out and say, you know, people used to believe in this argument. They used to believe that people switched to agriculture for this reason. But I think that's junk. I think people switched for this reason, okay? So there's going to be kind of two arguments. He's going to set up the old argument that he doesn't believe in, and then he's going to set up his argument, the new argument. So there's kind of two, and this progressivist argument is the old one, and then he's got a new one, okay? So I'd like you to try to figure out what the argument actually, what those arguments actually are, okay? I've asked you a third question here. What data does he use to support his idea that farming had a negative effect on the health of farmers? What kind of data? And then how does he explain humans' transition to agriculture? So not so much why do they switch to agriculture? What's the ultimate answer to this question?
Do you want to post the questions out there?
Yes, I do. They're at the end of the article, but I will. I'll put them up on the screen for you if it.
How much time do you have?
Well, I'm hoping we can be finished reading the article by the end of class, and maybe making a start on some of the premises. I think, but
6 pages.
but let's start. Yeah, well, let's start reading and see how we do. The other thing that's worth saying here, maybe, or might make you feel better, is it's a pretty easy read. So he's written this article for kind of regular people. It's not an academic journal or anything, so it should be easy enough for us to read. I hope. Okay, so are we okay to start reading?
You know that I'm not in Teams for social agriculture.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna add you right now.
I kept confusing it with social justice. That's why I couldn't find it.
Okay. So you're not part of the Comparative Cultures team?
Yeah.
You're not on the team. No, I'm just teasing. I'm gonna add you right now. I'm gonna add you right now. Just 1 second. I'm also gonna sneeze. Okay. Okay, so I'll let you start reading, and I'm going to add Mulder to Teams right now, and then the questions are at the end, and I'll put them on the screen in just a minute. Okay, there it is. Wow, that was instantaneous. Okay, good people. So we're just about out of time here, and I suspect I hope you're mostly through it, or maybe almost all the way through it. Tomorrow we'll pick up this article. We'll talk about the arguments in it. I have some photos to show you. Yeah, we'll pull this apart and see if we can actually figure out what Jared is trying to tell us and see what we think about that. Okay, so that'll be it for today. I hope you all have a lovely afternoon. I'll see you Friday. Yeah, that's it. See you tomorrow.